react. You whisper in my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that I'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, blowing the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home, begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating yet. My legend's written in the stone, yeah. Your crying age in defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, only the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. First round, fifth round, final round. Oh, 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 yeah. First round, fifth round, final round. No, 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 no. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, only the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh,
Hey Nick, Sean Spicer. I understand there's some controversy brewing about how many subscribers you have on YouTube. You have more subscribers than anybody. Then it's probably the biggest, largest YouTube subscription that anybody's had. But also it's not numbers that matter, Nick. And I know everyone's gonna quibble over this, but it's content, it's quality, and your subscribers are amazing. They're great. They're high quality subscribers, and that's really what you have to look at. Don't just focus on the numbers. I mean, if people are spewing a bunch of fake news, just don't get in the mud. They're amazing folks. Their engagement, the way that they like the videos. Anyway, I hope this puts this to the end. I hope that this controversy is over and we know who the real YouTube subscriber champ is, and it's you, Nick.
Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone, to In Time. I will say I'm kind of happy that Sean Spicer never figured out that we weren't the ones that were being made fun of in that clip. But at any rate, he's a good sport. Thank you all for joining us. It's not an easy day today, and we've had too many of these, and everyone knows that. And somebody has pointed this out, and I think this is true. We all kind of have to monitor our mental health, and it's exhausting for everybody, and it's exhausting for us when we've been covering war for a very long time. And covering just a previous mass shooting in Buffalo, in which we really did a deep dive. So for this show, I think this is about all I'm going to say on it. We may end up touching on it, but it really isn't the subject of tonight's show, and I think everybody needs a break, and I think we need to try to have as good a time as we can, and that's what we're going to do. Unfortunately, we have Joss Martin on, so we will try anyway. But it's kind of like, what can we do? I didn't know. It's the guest that we had. So, Xandring, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Recovering from my concussion, so
yeah,
I can remember things again. That's good.
You had a battle with a door, and lost.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I'm waiting yet to see any pictures because, to the best of my recollection, I never once had an issue with any doors.
Yeah. Well. I wish most of my defeats I couldn't remember half as well as you can't remember this one. So thank you all for joining us. Tonight's topic, loosely was going to be, we've talked about Christian atheism before, which I think one of the reasons I find it so fascinating is because it's, as someone who does identify as an anti-theist and have had many sort of anti-theist conversations, despite one of my best friends is Greek Orthodox, it's funny when I see Christians and atheists unite over some of the weirdest things. And one of them that they really unite on is one of our previous guests, Marianne, who's been here several times, and she talks about how she really loves what Jesus had to say. She actually gives sermons in church, and but she doesn't necessarily believe that he was even real, and she doesn't care. And boy, wow, the number of Christians and atheists who finally found something they can agree on when she says that, they do not like her. So we've had her on, and we did the show with Mr. Rogers. She hasn't been able to come by yet. I'm hoping she is going to come in later in the show, so we will be standing by. But we did get Martin, and he's here, and welcome, Martin. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you? He may be muted there.
I'm fine, and thank you for getting my name the right way round this time.
Yeah, well, I'm dyslexic, but in your case, I actually knew what I was doing. But
Joss is such an unusual surname, even in this country. An awful lot of people end up thinking it's my first name.
Oh, well, yeah, kind of, you have it right on Twitter, and then we always have a conversation because Joss, the only Joss that most Americans know, has it as his first name, and it's all the, And we were discussing this. Americans don't always like to think past step one. I'm an American, so I get to make that kind of joke. So, would you mind real quick just tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are, and just so that people know. Yeah.
Sure. So I'm Martin. I'm half Scottish and half Cornish. I'm 62. I live in a township in Lancashire in the northwest of England that has the wonderful name of 𝐓𝐢𝐬𝐿. I'm married, got 2 grown-up kids, and I'm a vicar in the Church of England.
All right. So now, one of the reasons I thought this would be great to have you on is because the last time we had you on was to discuss the quote, no true Christian Scotsman. And it's if I'm ever arguing with theists, in particular Christians, and I'm just tired of it and I want to bail and I want to see them fight amongst themselves, I'll just say, well, really, the true Christian is the one that, and then boom. And yeah, we had that discussion before, and don't get me wrong, you can do the same thing to atheists if you're interested. I liked your position before, and frankly, as we were talking about, so and you had said this in the green room when we were talking, and I want to make sure we get a chance to hear this position again. And you said this in the show, but not everybody, as shocking as it may be, not everybody watches the show. Oh dear Lord, let's knock everything over. When you hear somebody say that, well, gee, how can you call somebody who is perfectly willing to see that, okay, let's just say, but for the sake of argument even, let's say that Jesus didn't exist. It doesn't even matter to me that he existed. What matters to me are, specifically also some interpretations of his teachings, because there are people who will say, well, his teachings mean X, Y, and Z. So it's already problematic to say what matters is his teachings. But what matters is, these elements of his teachings, and that's what I care about. And people say, well, that's not a Christian. So what are your views on that?
Right, that's an interesting one, because I think I distinguish between, I think, seeing a line of it's not what I would understand authentic Christianity to be as I understand it, but it's not for me to tell somebody else they're not a Christian. And I would be, I'd be wanting to dialogue with someone with those views or any views. And my role, as I see it, is not to try and make anybody believe anything. It's to be able to try and give a sensible account of my faith, and if it strikes a chord with other people and they want to find out more, then so be it.
As a vicar, what do you think your most important role is? And if another,
gosh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, another 60 years from now, if they're saying this about you, you'll say you've lived the life that you wanted. So what is that thing?
I think to be clear on a couple of things. One is, the situation of the church in this country. I always find it interesting on Twitter when, understandably, Americans tend to make a number of assumptions, and that is that all churches get tax exemption, and we don't see that in this country. That all pastors are somehow fleecing their flocks. I don't get paid by my congregation at all. I'm paid differently. And one of the things I love particularly about being a minister in the Church of England, the Church of England's position is that I have a duty of care to anybody, not just who comes to my churches, but anybody who lives or works in my parish, be they of another faith, no faith, whatever. If there's something I can do to try and help somebody in need in my parish, then the Church of England would expect me to try and do that.
All right, so basically, it sounds like what you're saying is sort of your first responsibility is to the community and to care for the community, regardless of any other differences.
Yeah, well, I suppose you see, I kind of, as far as I'm concerned, that is one of the primary responsibilities of any Christian. But yeah, so I get, if you like, one of the things, and I mean, in this, bearing in mind, I'm university educated, and in this country, a member of the Church of England clergy, I am certainly in about the, I think it works out about certainly the bottom half of the income levels in this country. So yeah, any idea that I've done this to somehow fatten my bank account isn't the case. But I consider I'm blessed because what income I get from doing something I would do a lot of it voluntarily if I had a different job anyway.
So now I asked this.
Back up for just a moment?
Please, Henry. Absolutely.
You'll have to forgive my ignorance of churches and titles, but what exactly is a vicar?
Right. Okay. It probably helps if I explain that there are two different. If you can imagine, almost like a railway track with two tracks. In one, there's the job title, and in the other, there's what we would call the office. So when I was first ordained, everybody who's first ordained in the Church of England does a year as what's called a deacon. Then after that, we have another service. Then we become a priest. So every minister in the Church of England is a priest, but vicar indicates a specific job title, which means I'm involved in running parish churches, as opposed to, say, being an army chaplain or a hospital chaplain, who would still be priests, but they wouldn't be a vicar. I don't know if that helps or not.
Okay.
So it's essentially a job position of so you're a priest or a minister, but it's a specific job position for. No, that's very good.
A vicar is someone who looks after who looks after a parish.
And since that begs another question I would like to ask. Can you talk just briefly, at least in very broad strokes, sort of the difference? I think most Americans aren't very much aware of that church. The Catholic Church we're very aware of, and for atheists all too. There's a lot of friction there. So, but the difference is between the Anglican Church and the either the Catholic Church or Orthodoxy is something that we don't understand, and this isn't a theology seminar, so we don't need to
Sure.
But I'm sure broad strokes that if you got any, please.
Yeah, but very basically, there was two things happened to coincide. One was Henry VIII got his knickers in a right knot with the Pope because the Pope wasn't going to give him one of the divorces he wanted. And so he wanted, for political reasons, really, wanted to break the authority. He wanted to break the authority of the Pope over the church that was in England. And I think it's fair to say most church historians would say that kind of coincided with the church was also church leaders who wanted to try and have more freedom. And so effectively what happened was that Henry VIII simply declared that the Pope had no authority over the church in England and that he was now the head of the church. So that's how it got started. So the Church of England is rooted in the kind of historical church. I mean, there's no creed or there's no doctrinal statement that we would sign up to that would make us unique. Anything that would be specifically unique to being the Church of England, the things like the historic creeds, Nicene Creed, all those sorts of things are what we do. And the Church of England is a very mixed, has become a very mixed church in terms of we talk about high and low church, or the slang is up or down the candle, and there are some churches that are so high that you would struggle in their liturgical practice to tell that they weren't Catholic churches. At the other end of the scale, there are some Church of England churches who, if they decided that tomorrow they were going to become independent, people would struggle to see the difference, and everything in between. It's a really, really broad church.
So, in that way, it sounds a bit like the Church of Canada, as it's been explained to me, who has an atheist pastor of all things. So, if I can ask, I'd like to know what frustrates you most about the people who you shepherd and you're trying to sort of improve compassion. What troubles you the most about them and about where religion is headed, and what inspires you the most and gives you the most hope for the future?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think the thing that most frustrates me is small-mindedness in people, and some of the things that people get their knickers in a knot over, and I find myself sort of thinking, there are people in the world who are starving. We've got the situation like Ukraine, and you want to get all antsy about this thing, which to me seems kind of really disproportionate. On the other hand, the thing that really inspires me are people who are really trying hard to live out the faith as they understand it, and trying to be generous and really just want to, I guess, try to be part of the change they would like to see in life where they are.
So, and having said that, and certainly I've got my objections on both sides of the aisle. You're on a channel now that has a broad base in atheism. We don't, as I said before, we don't identify as an atheist channel, but I'm an atheist and anti-theist. And when I started out, the only people I knew that I could draw from was from. So these are the topics that we often discuss and are interested in. So you're now talking to ostensibly a bunch of atheists and anti-theists. What most encourages you about them, and what do you see in them that you most are frustrated by and would like to see change?
Okay.
Hold on, one thing. So his address is going to be right. His address is going to be right at the bottom of your screen, folks. So, that's his address and phone number right there. So, having said that, please continue.
Buckingham Palace, London.
Okay.
Okay. Right. I suppose one of the things I find really, really interesting is when actually thinking about Christians. If I take Twitter, is a brilliant example. And
of what
I find really, really interesting is that actually there are Christians and atheists who don't agree with each other, but they recognise that both the other side are coming from a position that of being genuine, and there's a respect. While you and I might both love to burn each other at the stake, we wouldn't. I find really, really, really kind of mind-numbing is that there are Christians and atheists who seem to think they're going to show the best of what they believe to by piling hate on each other. And actually, the strident atheist and the strident Christian have far more in common in temperament than either side would ever care to admit.
That's an interesting observation. I would agree with you. That wouldn't have been my first answer, but quite frankly, that's at least as good as mine. So that's a really good observation.
What answer should I have given?
The only quibble I'll have is Twitter strikes me as usually being somewhat of a cesspool. So the idea that it's you see much of the best of anybody on there, but I'm sorry, what?
There's some absolutely delightful people on Twitter as well. I know what you mean.
There are some, and you, Marianne, I can think of. I only need one hand to think of the number of people I think that I've met on Twitter that's unfair. So I could probably go to two hands, but in 5-6 years on Twitter, my concern. The anonymity of it, I think people who are spoiling for a fight go there, they start a fight, and so you end up seeing so much of the worst of everybody, and then the people who are good get trodden down very, very quickly. They usually get a thicker skin and but it's tough for those people. We have a super chat. The show's like 10 minutes in, and I'm already getting trolled by my own co-host. I'm legally obligated to read these. So $9.99 is Andring. I found this is the only way for me to get paid. Listen, I give you $10,000 a month. We've had this discussion. $10,000 a month. I think that's pretty good. It's in rubles, but it's not. I didn't mess that currency up. That's really got nothing to do with me. And it's still an improvement.
I took my last paycheck down.
Yep.
I took my last paycheck down that you sent me, and I couldn't even get a stick of the 1 cent bubble gum. So.
And this is the time you think to start arguing for a raise. Okay, well.
Of course.
Well, look at the bright side. Nick's going to give me 100% pay rise, aren't you, Nick?
Yeah, I am. I absolutely am. Just for your appearance on this show, and 100%. And Titan is going to continue to get his Monopoly money. So.
Yeah, and what's 100% of nothing again, Nick?
I don't know. I was never very good at math, but it's at least twice as much as it was yesterday. So. I'm glad Marianne isn't here to tell you the truth, because me against all three of you might be a little bit much. All right. So you know what? I find that interesting, and I do think that is an observation that I've made, is that it's interesting. I made it a different way, and I like yours better, which is sort of, for me, I've noticed that when theists get very hostile on Twitter, I was like, okay, you're doing everything that you're accusing the anti-theists or the rabid anti-theists of, but it's not just what they're accusing them of, it's actually what they're doing. So that's an interesting observation. How do you think we should go about trying to improve the conversation and reaching that ideal of people trying to understand a bit more and be less narrow-minded?
Okay. I guess, you see, at one level, it's about trying to establish the common humanity we have. You know, the end of the day, if you can't actually find it in yourself to try and be decent, the bottom line is don't be a dick.
Don't be or what was the don't be evil? No, I was thinking of something.
No. Yeah,
no.
And I think, you know, that actually. I suppose, you see, there's a sense in which I think one of the reasons why you and I relate well, Nick, is that I believe people matter because, from my perspective, everybody is made in the image of God, and therefore I should be seeking to respect that and look for that. You believe that people are worthwhile, so you'll look. So actually, there's in this sense, it doesn't matter whether someone's a theist or an atheist or whatever, that if we're trying to, I mean, I guess one of my rules in life is to look for the best in people and allow for the worst.
Too many people, and I think Marianne... yeah, please, designer.
I was just going to say, I think you're giving Nick a hell of a lot of credit for saying that he cares about all people, because I think I'm challenging his, give the best to all people, cares about all people.
I never thought of you as a person, as Andring. Don't worry.
I don't know why not. My last name's right there, and it clearly says person.
It is.
So,
it's Andring person. That's
of
true.
All the people on world,
you're technically a person. You must be.
You should be. I am.
That's true. Well, and one of the funny things is I think both Marianne and I have a tendency to fill that first part, which is to sort of always look for and see the best in everybody. It's hard for people who do that to be genuinely prepared if and when they don't meet the expectation. That's something I've never been able to get my head around in any meaningful way. And that's actually probably more ego than anyone else. Well, how could somebody that I thought was good be either not, or even maybe just have a bad day? Because of course that's the other thing. We don't tend to see other people as full-fledged human beings. So what you see is all of them, and if it happens to be one of the worst days of their lives and they end up being snippy, mean, whatever, we take that as the whole of them and not just one slice.
A key thing I think, certainly for me, is to be fully aware of your own flaws. Because if I know I'm not perfect, then actually it'd be utterly ridiculous to expect other people to be.
I think that's another good point. Fully aware of your own flaw would take me a while. I don't think I have that kind of paper around if I was going to write it all down.
And another thing you and I would be agreed on is there's nothing worse than, and I'll stick to religious people, nothing worse than religious people who behave as if they believe they really are somehow so much better than everybody else, because it's nonsense.
Yeah, I find it interesting that it's like evolution has built our brains specifically to make those kinds of snap judgments. In the example you used, they're having a bad day, so they're just kind of a dick that day, and you just happen to meet them that day, and you're like, wow, that person's really a dick, and not really stopping to think, well, it could just be that you caught them at a particularly bad moment. Yet our brains are specifically set up to make those kinds of snap decisions, to take those first impressions. That's the reason that the saying first impressions matter, because they do. They make a hell of an impression on us because, growing up in the savannas of Africa, if you didn't make a quick snap decision, you often ended up dead. So, it turned out it was more beneficial for us to make those quick snap decisions and just go with that than to wait for more information when that more information could be, jaws closing around your neck. So we have this bit of a dichotomy of we're trying to give people the benefit of the doubt and trying to recognize that, they're a whole person and they're very complicated, very complex. And we need to be cognizant of that. At the same time, we're fighting our own brains, just instinctive propensity to simply jump to that conclusion and then dismiss it and move on.
So I've got two questions here. So the first one is from 𝗢𝗙𝗲𝗛, and Mr. Us asks, didn't Jesus say that in the Sermon on the Mount? The meek shall inherit the earth, and don't be a dick. Really?
Yeah, well, of course. Well, I mean, of course, the old gag is the meek will inherit the earth if it's all right with everybody else.
Yeah. And then we got another question. And I'll be honest. I don't know enough to understand this question, so my hope is that it can. But the question is from Pippa. Does Martin have like a congregational church or a Methodist maybe? Congregational. Sorry,
Right.
You may be able to understand.
Yeah. I mean, the Church of England equivalent, in the States is the Episcopal Church. We're not congregational from the point of view if, as the ultimate leader of my parish, there's things to do with matters of worship and certain other things. The end of the day, if I think something needs to be a certain way, that needs to be done that way. But no intelligent, sensible person would ever try and lead like that unless it really mattered. So, I mean, I have a leadership team who are elected from the congregation who I work with fairly closely. And I recently, if I say so myself, I found myself saying something to somebody the other day, which I quite liked, which was that, speaking as a Christian, I said, I do wish that more of us would make sure that the hill we chose to die on was Calvary.
Well, that's a good one. That is a good one. I'd be proud of that one too. As a somewhat aside, I'm hoping this dovetails well with what we've been discussing, but it's something that I'd like to get your take on. So you and I did meet on social media. We see each other a lot on social media. Social media can often
that's
be
our story, and we're sticking.
Yeah, yes, sir. That's I didn't know who he was until the camera came on, folks. Sorry. I didn't get to them. By that point, it was too late. So do you think that social media, so you use your real name on social media, I use my real name on social media, and it's been something I've noticed, that people who use their real name on social media tend to behave somewhat better. There's a couple of salient exceptions notwithstanding that one, but it looks from where I'm sitting that when you have that anonymity, that people, there isn't any kind of immediate blowback in people's lives. Nobody knows they said that, so people let down a lot of the filters they normally have. Do you think it would behoove us to say, now Facebook's been moving in the direction of you have to use your real name, end of discussion, and there are people who are sitting there saying, well, that would be great, that would greatly improve the discourse, and others saying there are some people, and this is, I believe this is fully true, and I think you would agree, there's some people who really can't use their real name for any number of reasons, but should still be able to partake in this. So what do you think? Do Do you think that it would help and should be done, that maybe people should be using their real names in social media? And then if so or if not, is there anything better that can be done to help improve or reduce the toxicity of social media?
Sure. That's a real tough one, isn't it? Because if people are, if there's no doubt about it that one of the worst characteristics in human beings is the more anonymous that we can feel, the tendency is the more likely we are likely to do something that we would not do if we thought it could come back to us. And to try and train ourselves to live as if we're always being watched is a difficult thing to do. And I get there are a whole host of reasons why people might be impossible for them to use their real name. To be honest with you, I'm just glad it's not my problem to have to fix, because I don't know what the answer is.
Do you think it needs to be fixed? Please. Or do you think that, because it's very easy on social media. I mean, I have in my truck one of the oldest forms of social media out there, the CB radio. And you're very anonymous on the CB radio as well. Yeah. People can't see that you're the one speaking into the mic, and you just broadcast out to a bunch of nameless, faceless, non-people out there. And as a result, you get some incredibly childish activity going on a CB radio, which is why I almost never listen to it anymore. But when you walk into a truck stop, people aren't treating each other that way, because you're now face to face with somebody, and you try some of the crap that you pulled on the CB radio, and you're liable to get somebody to bust you right in the mouth. Do you think that it's something that really needs to be fixed? I mean, it would be nice to fix, but is it making that big of a difference in our personal interactions, actually face to face, or is it maybe a concern because more and more of our interactions are becoming online and thus subject to that anonymity issue?
Well, there's part of that, and I think part of the answer lies in something you just said, which is that you've tended to stop using your CB radio, and that actually. I think it would be an awful shame if all the positive benefits of social media basically got drowned out and swamped by all the toxicity. Because ultimately, people, the more it gets that way, the more people will just tend to come away from it, and particularly in the world we're in, it's a given. Connecting not in real life is a big part of how so many people connect, and for some people, it's a lifesaver, because they actually might. I know of housebound people and people, whether physically or because of mental health problems, who been really annoyed in this country, certainly at when we had our first lockdown, and some churches started saying, "Oh, look at us, aren't we clever? We're now doing the Zoom churches and things like this." And some people say, "But we've been doing that for 10 years." And so for some people, that social connection is vital, and I'd hate to see that drowned out by all the crap.
Well,
do you think it's having a negative impact on our? The second part of that, do you think it's having a negative impact on our actual personal interactions where we have to face the people? Do you think it's making us more rude in that arena, or do you think it's still fairly limited to the generally anonymous spaces online?
Yeah, my instinct is, and this is only kind of, I'm no social scientist, but my instinct is that the more we throw out bile at other people, the more we will start to think that way when we're with people, and it might not happen immediately. But I find it hard to believe that at human beings that we can actually so disconnect who we are online and who we are offline. We might think we're doing it, but I'm not convinced that holds up. So I think I guess keyboard warriors run the risk of that acid seeping into them and eating them away slowly.
And we have a comment. This is No super chat. I'm just going to elevate it automatically. Sinister Porpoise says, the Sinister Porpoise is not my real name. My real name is Malevolent Cetacean. Your secret is safe with us. All right. Did you have another question? I wanted to change topics, but I want to make sure, Xander, you got anything on that one that you wanted to hit? Slightly different topic.
No, sorry. It's kind of a slight tangent there. We ended up in social media land, and so I just thought I'd get a.
Can I just make the observation that I think identifying as Sinister Porpoise is actually an act of kindness to the rest of us based on his real name, or her real name, or their real name. Its real name.
Her real name. The Sinister Porpoise. Yeah. And she's the left-handed Sinister Porpoise. So.
Well, you can't be a right-handed Sinister Porpoise because
you cannot.
Sinister means left-handed.
Well, I'm speaking to someone who's educated and who gets that one. Okay. No, it's your fault. So everyone, if you guys are upset about hearing this for the umpteenth billion time, sorry, but he asked for it. So we do have a live chat filled with the solipsists, which is kind of odd. I don't know how a live chat is filled with solipsists. At most, you can have one solipsist in a live chat at a time. But what is it? A solipsist, a denotologist, and utilitarian walk into a bar, and the utilitarian goes up, orders a drink for everybody, and holds up the glass and says, "To the greatest good for the greatest number." Yay! Everybody's, okay. So then the denotologist goes up, buys a round for everybody. Sorry, I meant to say pub. Buys a round for everybody, holds it up. To always doing the right thing. Yay! Everybody does, okay. And then the solipsist goes up, buys one beer, and just chugs it. And the denotologist and utilitarian go up to the solipsist and say, why didn't you get everybody a beer? The solipsist says, I just did. Come on, it was better than you could have given me like the courtesy laugh. Okay, fine.
I'll give you the golf clap.
Yeah, the call. Yeah. So, a question I wanted to ask, and I thought this is now I've started. It's gonna be solipsist and recursion jokes all night in our live chat.
Well, before you get going, then I'll give you a pub joke.
Oh, please.
All right.
Please.
A white horse walks into a bar and says, "I'll have a drink, please." And the barman says, "Certainly. What would you like?" And the horse says, "Oh, I've never been in a bar before." So the barman says, "Well, we've got a drink named after you." So the white horse says, "Okay, I'll have an Eric then, please."
Okay, fine. I will do you one more. Bartender says we don't serve.
We're gonna get.
I'm going to finish this one. Then you're going to tell me why we shouldn't be doing all these. Bartender says we don't serve faster than light particles here. And Tachyon walks into a bar. What were we going to say is Andrew?
Yeah. Don't
Horse
quit your day
walks
job.
into a bar and the barman says, "Why the long face?"
Blonde walks into the bar, says, "Ouch."
Yeah.
All right.
Fish swam into a concrete wall and said, "Damn."
Oh God! I actually like that one. That's a problem. That's a really the fact that I like that one.
Here you go, Nick. This is my father's.
This is my fault.
My father's favourite joke. Right? Two parrots are stood on a perch, and one turns to the other and says, "Can you smell fish?"
Yeah.
That one went over my head.
What the perch ever do to you?
Okay, it took me a sec. Oh God. All right. Well, okay. Serious question
We'll blame the.
It's totally my fault. I derailed.
Look what a good evangelist I am, Nick. Look what a good evangelist I am. I've got an atheist keeps appealing to God.
Oh Jesus! Oh yeah. Well, if that's the low bar, that's like I say God bless. I've had that happen where somebody sneezes, I say God bless you, like aha, and it's like really. It's called a colloquialism. Give me a friggin' okay. Yeah. Fine. Yeah. If you're that desperate for a win, you can. Even Freud said sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Well,
So
do you know how many? Do you know how many Freudian analysts it takes to change a light bulb?
how many?
2. One to change the bulb, and the other to hold the penis. I'm your stepladder.
How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb?
No. I don't.
One, but they really have to want to change.
Okay. How many how many social workers does it take to change a light bulb?
How many?
None. But you need 13 of them to form the committee to write the report on living with darkness.
Oh. Oh dear Lord! Okay,
This
32
has really
people
gone off the
have
rails.
unsubscribed. Yeah, we've 32 people have unsubscribed. I think I know the demographics. Oh dear Lord!
Right,
Well, no,
sit down.
I think. Well, we all needed a. Oh God, sinister porpoise! I don't think we've had a good recursion joke in 5 minutes. Can we hear that joke again? All right. So I think we all need a laugh today. So I'll say.
Okay. I like that one.
Yeah, that was.
Wait, Sinister has a great one. A minister, a priest, and a rabbit walked into a minister, a priest, and a rabbit walks into the bar. The bartender turns to the rabbit and asks, "What'll it be?" The rabbit goes, "I don't know. I'm only here because of autocorrect."
Well, there was the Hitchens did this one best, and it's what is it, a rabbi, priest, and a mullah walk into a bar. Bartender turns to them and goes, "What is this? Some kind of joke?" That was okay. I see how it goes.
Dyslexic atheist who used to dyslexic agnostic. He used to lie awake at night wondering whether or not there was a dog.
Yeah, I love that one. That's a good one.
Dyslexic Satanist who sold his soul to Santa.
I have never heard that one, but that's a good one. We should do a comedy. We should just do one. That would be good. Do like what was it? Because Hitchens it was the correspondence dinner, and everyone comes up and does the we should do the in time correspondence.
What does DNA stand for, Nick?
Well, according to what's O.J. Simpson did not attack, but I'm sure you've got another one.
National Dyslexic Association.
Oh dear Lord!
You're at it again.
Yeah, no, and I'm reading live chat now. I'm going to get completely. Oh my God. Right. Oh yeah. How many Microsoft developers does it take to change a light bulb? None. Microsoft redefines it as darkness as the industry standard. Oh my God. You can't Titan. You can't explain Japanese history in YouTube side chat. You can only summarize it. Really, really. I know.
Do you know the limerick that starts? "The once was a young man. Once was a young poet from Japan."
No.
Right. The once was a young poet from Japan whose poems could never quite scan. When asked why it was, he said, "It's because I try to fit as many words in the last line as I possibly can."
I know, yes. Oh, I think you may have actually... No, you told me that one in DMs. Oh, dear Lord. That's a good one. I like that one, too. Oh, my God. Oh, dear Lord.
All right, folks.
Yeah.
That's our show for tonight. Don't forget to tip your bartender. We will be here again tomorrow night for another round of Hot Mic.
Hot
Please
Mic.
give generously, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dear Lord. So, Nick, what did you do on Tuesday? Well, after dinner, we got together with a vicar and just started telling jokes on live stream for about 30 minutes. What did you do? Like, what's the punchline? No, that was the show.
Yeah.
A philosopher, a vicar, and a truck driver had a show together.
Yeah. There you go. Oh, dear Lord.
Well, you know when Noah kept his bees, don't you, Nick?
I know that you can't what?
Do you know when Noah kept his bees?
Where?
In the archives.
Oh, God. Okay, Titan again. Lance isn't a common name these days, but in medieval times, people were named Lance a lot. Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh, dear Lord. I had a really good question, but it's like it was actually a really serious question, and now I'm like, okay, how the fuck do I segue into that? Okay, serious question, and we'll probably get back to the jokes. I like the jokes. Oh, here we go.
I was just going to say I have a curiosity question, but ask your serious question first.
If your curiosity question isn't a joke, ask that. I'll do mine, and then we'll make fun of Sinister Porpoise some more.
Well, mine's probably going to take a little bit of time to answer. So,
all right. So, So we've been talking about what you see your role as, and sort of what your goals are, and we had also talked about no true Christian issues and stuff like that. So you get a parishioner and comes up to you and says, and this is interesting because more atheists actually have this problem than care to admit it. But it still isn't there's so many Christians who sit there and say there's no such thing as an atheist. They all know there's a God. No, I've been on both sides of that. Atheists really, truly don't believe it's not a. So one of your parishioners comes up to you and says, I've realized I don't believe anymore, but I wish I did. And I miss that, and I don't know where to go from here. What would you tell them?
I would want to sit down with them over a cup of coffee, because I'll do anything for a free cup of coffee, and I would want to find out kind of a bit about what was going on, and I'd encourage them to think about what it was in life that inspires them and and really kind of lights their fire, and try to look at ways of drawing on that.
So if somebody is struggling with their faith and they need help, you're going to bum a cup of coffee off of them. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, why not? Get an awful lot of good conversations over a cup of coffee.
I'm just saying,
never let an existential crisis go to waste.
I'm just like, I understand you're not paid a lot, but Jesus. Okay, yeah, I'll help you solve the world's problems, but you're gonna. I would
sit down and I would be wanting to explore what was going on. I would not be wanting to try and push them in a certain direction.
All right. Well, that's not a common answer, but I think that's one reason you and I get along. So, is Andrew, where did you want to? Oh, God. And I'm going to write down some of these jokes and we'll catch up with them. But Xander, what was yours going to be? And then I'm going to mute and cough a little bit more. So
his condition is stable. Oh, my God. My question is what was the most compelling thing that made you believe?
Oh, crumbs. An experience I had when I was 19. And I better unpack that. I'll try and tell it as succinctly as I can. I mean, I was brought up to go to church, and it kind of went in one ear and out the other. By the time I was 17, I went to church basically because the grief I would have got off my mother if I tried not to would have been overwhelming. When I was in my first year at university to study history, there was a young woman who I had an absolute crush on. And if she had said to me, Martin, do you want to come and sit and watch paint dry for 10 hours? I would have gone with her quite happily just to sit next to her. And one evening she invited me to a service being led by Christian students in our college had a chapel. And in the middle of that, there was a reading from the Bible involving some words of Jesus. And there's the only way I can describe the experience was it was as if I heard those words not being read, but being spoken to me. And in the time of quiet immediately afterwards, I kind of found myself sort of saying, well, okay, I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but I know I believe I'm being spoken to, and started, and that's the bottom line. I mean, there's been a lot of thinking, a lot of development, but what started me as an active Christian was that experience, and I'm fully open to the fact that there are all kinds of other ways in which that experience could have been understood. But somebody I know who's very wise, talking about something else altogether, I said like that people can question our interpretation of our experience, but at the end of the day, it was our experience.
Thank you for that.
I'd like to reassure. It's never happened since.
Well, this may be worth mentioning. Well, it's funny, to tell you the truth. You and I have talked a lot, and I've never even thought to ask you that. And I think that was a really good question. So, and I was going to say, that was an echo.
For it.
Yeah, sorry, I had my boom mic up because I ate the last of my cookie. It's always been something I've thought of as fascinating, and it's like when it comes to people's personal faith, the one thing that I have never seen anybody ever be able to really adequately defeat in any kind of debates or discussions about is there a God or not, was the and one of the ones I think I found, just from my experience, found to be most moving to people who believe, was a personal experience. And I've heard lots of very intelligent atheist type people go through and explain the science behind how we feel kind of this euphoric state that can overcome us, and how there are so many different ways to achieve that. But you still, again, it's your experience. I can't experience. You can only describe it to me.
Yeah.
So, and I don't. I mean, how do you defeat that? Because I don't know what you experienced, and I can't. I can only take your word for it.
Sure.
So I'm always curious.
There are people who flatly refuse to, and that's their choice. And I think I think there's this thing about I've had some good-natured ribbing on Twitter, where one or two people who've referred to me as their deluded friend, and I'm quite happy to refer to myself as their deluded friend. And although I say the thing is, I recognise that I cannot prove that God exists, but then I don't think anybody, obviously, I mean, people can't prove God doesn't exist, because if somebody could prove it, then I'm not stupid. If it was absolutely irrefutably obvious there was no God, you'd have to be an idiot to believe it. But I also recognise I cannot prove it.
Well,
trying to prove a negative is nearly impossible. Trying to prove a negative is very difficult. I mean, it can be done in some cases, but trying to prove well, how do you know there isn't a God? It's like, well, I don't. But until somebody shows me some sort of parallel, some sort of example, something to go off that even suggests that a God is possible, then I will absolutely take you seriously. Or if you have something that is tangible that you can bring to me and show me and say, look, this is the evidence right here, and point to it. It's like I'm a very tangible person.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, and I have to say, when I'm the most compelling the most compelling theists that I've talked to are people who came to their belief because of a profound personal experience of their own. And because that's a very interesting thing. I get very tired very quickly of watching, theist versus atheist debates, specifically because, the atheist pretty much just puts up the thing, hey, look, there isn't any real, tangible evidence of God that you can point to and say, look, this is the evidence that leads to the one and only conclusion, or excludes all other conclusions, that, God is real. And then the theists will start, they have all these different kinds of arguments of how they can prove that, the likelihood that God exists is greater than the likelihood that he doesn't. And I'm like, yeah, but none of that is compelling But the ones that get interesting are the ones that are like, okay, because there's plenty of scientific arguments against all of that.
Sure.
People's like, well, the book, the Bible right there, and it's like, okay, but there's been several things that have kind of been disproven. Like the global flood we've pretty much disproved that was even possible. And I'm perfectly willing to accept that, maybe the especially in the Old Testament, that many of these stories are allegories. They're not literally true. They were, they're stories that were told, amalgamations of stories that were told to, get across certain kinds of points or, philosophical ideas or whatever. So I'm willing to accept some of those things, but there's still, it's like I've seen some pretty convincing scientific arguments that disprove just about every single one of the, when somebody tries to point to actual evidence of God that you can, everybody can independently analyze. But the ones that I always find compelling and I find it fascinating because, it's like they have this genuine belief. They're usually pretty blasé about what other people believe. It's like, look, I believe because, I had this personal experience, that led me to this conclusion that, that God must be real. And I'm like, well, that's very interesting, and I obviously I can't disprove your personal experience, nor can I can't even experience it. So it's like they've always found me in it. So I always am curious, what was the most compelling thing that caused somebody to believe a God exists, because I can't get there. So I love finding out people's reasons.
Sure.
So we had a question in live chat from Pippa. So what is your favorite Bible verse and why?
Oh, that's easy. Sorry, you might have seen me just glance over at my study wall. I've got a daughter, 24, who a couple of years ago, she kind of asked me that quite innocently, and I hadn't made the connection that my birthday was coming up, and she hand painted me a canvas with it on. And it's a verse from John's Gospel where Peter says to Jesus, "You have the words of eternal life. Where else can we go?" And I love that because, there are some people who if I'm a bit snarky, sort of always in the victory of the faith. And I distrust that kind. Christians get subjected to the same pressures and turmoils, and crap can happen to you. But for me, whenever I found life difficult, for me, the reminder for me is that in those words, "Lord, you have the words of eternal life, where else can I go?" That however shitty life might be feeling, it would only feel even more shitty if I wasn't trying to follow my faith. So that's why.
Well, we all know, too, you're a fan of the musical chess, presumably. I'm going to call BS on that one, because clearly you can't.
Well, no, I'm not, actually.
Oh, yeah, thank you for finally copping to that one. It only took 20 tweets directly quoting from the musical before you're like,
Well, you kept saying how well you knew me, so I was expecting you to start singing like that so well.
Well, you realize there was more than one song in the musical, right? At least finally when I went to Much Ado. When I went to Much Ado, then you're like, okay. I was like, okay, at least he realizes I'm not genuinely comparing his singing to a dog. I haven't heard enough of it to be able to say that honestly or otherwise. But so other than
let's put it this way, Nick. Let's put it this way. I used to be a werewolf, but I'm all right now.
All right. So other than that, what is your favorite piece of literature other than the Bible?
Oh, crumbs. I'm an avid reader. I love the Narnia series. And the thing I find really fascinating is I used to read them from about the age of about 11. I used to read them every year. And the year that I'd become a Christian and I read them, and I suddenly realized what was going on in the story, and I thought, gosh, how could I be so stupid not to make the slightest connection? I love Lord of the Rings. I mean, gosh, there are just so many wonderful books out there.
I was going to say, I'm going to have to get. Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, I'm going to have to ask for something other than the Chronicles of Narnia because it's the Bible with animals. So I wanted a different.
I'm going to side with Xandring on this one. When I said other than the Bible, and you're just like, well, the Bible with fancily dressed up and all. Yeah, I think you're cheating.
Always.
Like when I say my favorite Disney movie of all time is The Lion King, and they're like, "Oh, so you're a Shakespeare fan?" And nobody seems to ever to get that because they don't realize that The Lion King is Macbeth with animals.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, there's I don't know if you're familiar with a Lebanese poet called Khalil Gibran, and he wrote an amazing piece, sort of long poetic thing called The Prophet. If you've never read it.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. And there's a bit in that out of all of it that, and I can't quote it exactly, but it says something along the lines how our joys dwell in the caverns carved by our sorrows. And I love that idea that it's only when you've known real upset that you can know real joy.
I have that one. My favorite line from that one was the I'm sorry, I was confusing the prophet with the alchemist. So no, I was about to quote the alchemist, but yes, Xandring, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, reading recommendations, the Tragedy of the Whale Ship Essex. If you ever want to feel great about living today, read The Tragedy of the Whale Ship Essex.
Okay.
Oh God. Okay. Okay. For those of you who don't know, Marianne just showed up.
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness!
What was she on? Marianne Standard Time.
Marianne Standard, yes. Welcome to the show. You missed the joking.
I set my timer for an hour off the correct time. It seems.
Oh.
So I assume you're just about done your show then.
Well, I think we can easily do another 15 minutes, and I'm going good. I was gonna, we were having lots of fun. You missed a party. We were telling atheist religious jokes, jokes about pirates, psychologists. How many therapists does it take to? And you missed it all. And we're not going to repeat it because, quite frankly, if you can't be bothered to show up on time.
And it's not like I could find it later on YouTube.
No, that's
we have not yet begun to show.
We have not yet begun to. Oh, and we do have a super chat I want to get to. $2 super chat. The Sinister Porpoise. Yeah, there's no snark on this channel. No, this is a snark-free zone. Obviously.
Wouldn't the Sinister Porpoise argue that I've been here the whole time, though?
Actually, yes, she would. You have been here the whole time. That's a really good point. You remember her, don't you? You're right.
Oh,
you're right. You've been here the whole time. Yes, we told the solipsist jokes. No, you're not. So, I would like to let me throw the ball in your court a little bit, and then we'll probably wrap it up. But so I'd asked a couple of questions, and so I'd like to get your thoughts on them. One of them was so I'd asked Martin first of all, what would he do if the most recent question I asked is if he had encountered a member of his community, someone who had been a devout Christian who said, I've actually lost my faith and I kind of want it back, but I don't feel like I can get it back. I've seen behind the curtains and I'm now either depressed or sad. I consider myself an atheist. What would he say about that? And he said he'd steal a cup of coffee from the guy. I'm going to go back. That's what he said.
I expect nothing less. Yeah.
So, and then we had talked also a bit about what were his complaints about the about sort of people in general, but also Christians and atheists. What did he think they were doing well? Where did he think they could improve? And without trying to strawman him here, which is unusual, I know, but I think he was talking about sort of being narrow-minded and thinking, well, gee, we're better than, and we'd kind of like to see improvements in that area. And we'd also talked about the sort of one of the central thrusts that we had talked about before, too, which is what does he do when someone comes up and says, well, it doesn't even matter to me whether or not Jesus existed. I believe in what he says. Does that count as a Christian? What happens if other people are telling him no, it doesn't, and some people are saying yes, it does? And I really enjoyed his answer to that, which he can hit on again if he'd like to. But so with that said, if you could introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about who you are, and we already have a question: are you a faith leader too? And then, given that those are some of the points that we've hit on, what are your views about those kinds of things? And please remember, this is a family show. We've been very respectful to Azandring and myself. You can say whatever you want to about Martin. That's fine. So take it away.
Well, why don't I answer the question first? Am I a faith leader myself? Not officially. I'm certainly not credentialed in any way in that direction. I do, however, I have over time in the church that I participate in, which is part of the United Church of Canada, led various, services when the minister is away, not because I'm special, but because I'm one of various people who agrees to do that. I've run various, discussion groups there and kind of tried to guide the conversation. So I'm certainly not a formal leader, but I'm a very active member of a faith community. I'll put it that way. And sometimes occasionally in a leadership position, but not formally. I am not using my camera for good reason, guys, because I'm sparing you all. Is all I'm going to say there. But I see that Nick has also closed his down. If you really need to know what I look like, I've done some other shows here. I'm sure you can find them. Other than that, let's see. How do I sum this up? To tell you the truth, I don't think I'd be a member. I am an official member of the United Church of Canada. If I were entirely solo in this world without the spouse and kids, I think I'd probably be a lot more active in our local Quaker congregation. I tried becoming a regular attender many, many years back, a dozen years or so, and there's just something about attending a silent meeting with loud toddlers that doesn't work. Everybody there was very kind, and they kept saying, hey, it's not distracting us. We love having them, but I'm telling you, after a couple of times of being there and spending the whole time cringing, I thought, well, I'm getting nothing out of this. I don't know what anyone else is getting. So then I ended up in the back room with some of the parents who felt the same way, and that was more of a social club, but it wasn't meeting the need. So if I were solo, I'd probably identify as Quaker. As it is, I'm pretty happy in the church that my husband grew up in, the United Church of Canada, and my personal background is Catholic, so that's a pretty wide range. From the Catholics to the Quakers is pretty broad. Catholics, as I think you all know, tend to be very have a lot of formal doctrine, have a very clear hierarchy and so on, whereas the Quakers are more, don't confuse them with the Amish and the Mennonites and so on. They're more like hippies with a heavy spiritual bent, I'd say. They tend to gather, a lot of them have silent meetings, not all, and it's the idea that anybody can bring forward what they feel led to bring forward. Some understand that as being led by, you pick the tag and somebody's applied it. People will say, by God, by the Holy Spirit. Others will say, by our collective unity and the sense of the meeting, they've got all kind. Really, everyone's free to have their take on how meaning and joy and a sense of community apply in their own lives. There's no real formal doctrine. The most they have is some general principles like pacifism, and they have a really neat book that's been around for hundreds of years, keeps getting updated, called Advices and Queries. And all that really is a whole lot of questions that are worth pondering. There are a few advices in there, but they're pretty straightforward. It's pretty common sense stuff, but it's worth reflecting on. It's a book meant to be reflected on. So that's a pretty loose kind of a faith community. Very, very different from what I grew in the Catholics. And the United Church spans almost that whole gamut. depending on which church and which congregation you're with. So if I've created confusion in answering that question, good, because I'm very unclear on it all myself.
Well, then why are you a leader in the community? Wait a minute, I don't understand. Okay, fine.
Oh, hey, I've done sermons. I'd be happy to actually. Anybody who wants to hear one of my sermons, I mean, bless you for wanting to, but I'm more than happy to provide links to those.
I would like
and
to
they
point
tend
out.
Not to, yeah.
Please,
yeah, go
please.
Ahead.
Well,
No,
I wanted to point out, just to be fair, when Marianne and I first met, and I was telling her specifically my views and why I do identify as an anti-theist. I'm a little unusual for anti-theists because I have a lot of theist friends, and I define theism and anti-theism much more narrowly. It's really what I object to is we are empowered by some higher power to tell you how to live. I'm fine with everything up until that point. So Marianne and I had been talking about, why I have these objections, and specifically what is the range of those objections. And she's like, well, I think our parish could could stand to learn a bit more about you and your views. Would you like to come talk in our church? I was like, wait, I'm going to come up and talk about anti-theism and atheism in your church. She said, yes, sir.
Yeah,
and I was just like,
yeah,
wow. Yep, and so that was confusing, quite frankly, and I've never understood a word she said since. So
I think it's called a honey trap, Nick.
I think that's we're gonna. I need the 𝗦𝗆𝐺 We're gonna put that into the thing where it's a trap.
If Marianne said, "Come on up and we're going to sacrifice you on our altar," would you go?
I have to think about that one.
You have to think about that.
It would be a unique experience. It's well.
Not
well, I would send a duly designated representative of In Time. Titan, what are you doing next weekend? Out of curiosity.
Wait, did we lose Xandring? I'm only seeing the split screen. I'm not watching YouTube, but I don't see him there anymore.
Oh, he's here. I think he's here. Should be.
Okay.
It's not my kind of luck that he'd be gone.
So how can I join into the conversation that I've mostly missed here, guys?
I had only one other question I think would get you completely caught up, really, because again, we were really just like it was all solipsism and recursion jokes, like all the way down for about 20 solid minutes.
Of that, huh?
No, it's 20 minutes. Guys, I understand, given my history for stretching the truth on occasion on air, I am being honest. That was about 20 minutes of jokes. And nobody backs me up on that. Given that 10 minutes of that was you, Nick, no. 10 minutes of jokes and 10 minutes of you.
He's got a point. I mean,
okay. So, shoot. I think we had a technical issue. He seems to have been disconnected from the show there. His cameras, I don't know what happened. We'll get the producers on that. So, we don't have any producers right now. So I guess we're just, one of these days I'll have to hook up the Shield to the audio, but until then, that's about the best I can do. That's how I know there
Martin,
is.
We've known each other a long time, and I don't know how we met initially. Honestly, I mean, it was certainly on Twitter. I don't know how.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've developed. We kind of have been able to feed off each other in terms of needling Nick here, and just generally enjoying life. I don't want to say at his expense.
I'm sure you don't. Speaking of differences of opinion on metaphysical matters, yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice to hear your voice, Marianne.
Thank you. Well, it's lovely to hear yours. Yeah, we've almost always communicated in text. I think we've heard from each other a couple times, but this is really, really nice. Yeah. Okay, so with that friendly moment over, come on, let's dig in here. Nick, where are we going?
One other question, and if anybody else has anything else in the live chat, definitely I'd like to hit that. But the one other one that I thought was worth revisiting was, okay, so now because of the communities that you and I spend so much time in, sometimes it can seem like the biggest arguments are atheists and theists, at least when it comes to is there really a God and all this other stuff. And there's a lot of other things that people argue about. This isn't a huge topic, but if we're talking about that topic, what most disappoints you in your own community about how they deal with atheists, and what disappoints you in that community, the atheist community, in how you see them dealing with theists? What would you most like to see changed?
Well, first, let me just be clear what you mean by my community. You're talking about like the online community of religious people, or are you talking about like my actual religious community and how we interact with atheists, etc.?
I'm talking all smartasses who try to embarrass their friends on YouTube channels with like millions of subs, according to Sean Spicer. That was Sean Spicer was earlier saying that we. But let's pick a community. Pick a community. I'm thinking in particular. I mean, we have most interacted in the. There are times when atheists or anti-theists do things that I cringe and I'm like, okay, that person does not speak for me, will never speak for me, and just woohoo. But so I think you've got some idea of probably the kind of shenanigans I'm talking about. So what is it that kind of you would like to see the other side grow up and improve on, and you'd like to see your own side at least of
okay, sure.
There you go.
Yeah, I think it's easy because it's the same answer for both, really, which is that, frankly, I think, and myself included, all the folks who are discussing these topics online really have to stop, to borrow the phrase, fiddling while Rome burns, and get doing something useful. I think we waste an awful lot of time yelling at each other about what each other thinks, or, choice of wording, or I don't know what, and not saying, is there anything we can do together? Is like, why are we here? Are we just here to take the piss from each other? Because if that's why you're here, fine, be upfront about it, and I guess I'll move on. But I try to engage people in a thoughtful way and say, I disagree with what you're saying, but here's why that matters, because we need to be able to work together. Like, and why are you pigeonholing people? Can you set that aside? Can we move beyond that? That's what I tend to talk about. And generally, I would say nobody's, really come out and just said flatly no. Maybe the odd person has said no, I'm just enjoying ripping on people. And I say, you know what? You were honest about it. Good on you. Thank you. But mostly people will get into all this discussion about, there's all this, religion is oppressive and all these terrible things happen. And I agree with them. I say, there's innumerable, I was going to say a number, but let's say innumerable abuses and oppression happening. I agree with you. But what are we going to do about it other than tell each other that we're wrong? Like, we don't seem to move past that just wanting to fight. That's my complaint, and that applies to all sides, and it's not my side or your side.
So I've got a lot of problems with what you just said, and I think I'm going to take the next week to tell you how you're wrong.
Well, is Andrew. You've got a platform. So we're going to take the shields down, and you and I just have a nice long, we're going to get a beer, we're going to sit back, and we're going to figure out how these two knuckleheads have been wrong this entire show, and we can explain it to them. I think, no. So, all right. Well, I have one more question I think that I do want to ask. And then I think we'll probably wrap it up. I would like to do this again with everybody and maybe have everybody show up on time. Excuse me. Jesus. Although I have to say, as I said that, I realized I kind of am choking because me, of all people, talking about being on time. I mean, it's in time, not on time. There's a reason. So,
well, you know what? It is.
Yeah, she made it here in time.
I do have to apologize, and not purely because I'm Canadian, but although that's certainly an influence. As it happens, my husband had to go out and help some family members who were in difficulty tonight. So I don't usually cook. I don't usually do certain things. I took that on, and it threw off all my scheduling, right? And so I finally looked at the clock and said, I've missed this and I feel awful. But we did have something of an emergency come up tonight, and I lost track. I am very sorry.
Don't listen. I actually said this to each of you, and I've done my best to say this off air, so there's no evidence I've ever said it. But I'd like to have you guys on more often, and we do usually on Thursdays we do After Dark, and I think you guys may enjoy that. It's an open hang, so we'll usually have on guests, especially somebody that our audience wants to talk to and has questions. We'll just chat for usually 10, 20, sometimes half an hour, and then just people can call in. It's a call-in show, but people can also join the hang, ask questions. So I think if you guys would be up for doing one of those on a Thursday coming up this Thursday, we're going to be doing basically something like that with Commander McMillan, who's just been absolutely amazing covering what's going on in Ukraine, which has been difficult for everybody. And the show is going to take a little bit of a turn, and I think it needs to. So we'll cover that. It's been hard for everybody on this show. We are, in essence, a kind of a crowdsourced news show. And if you do like the show and want to join us on our Discord, you can come in. We cover all sorts of topics. The news that we cover, usually it starts with people who see it and they know how we go through our sources and they bring it on. And it hasn't been good for a little while. And that's okay. We go through these cycles in time. We've had World War III trending while In Time has been airing more than once. And so it's, we've been through this. But it can be tough, and one of the things that happened today was that a 18-year-old high school kid who had gotten 2 assault rifles for his birthday, he had purchased them himself, went into an elementary school. He had shot his grandmother. Last we heard she was still alive, but he had shot her and then walked into an elementary school and at last count shot and killed 18 kids and 3 teachers. He was killed.
Never gets any less heartbreaking. It really doesn't.
It doesn't, and I don't know how to feel about that either, to tell you the truth, because I feel like if it ever does, maybe you lose your humanity. But on the flip side, we've been watching war for some time, and these are people who are stuck in this impossible situation and still manage to get through it. So
this is a little bit of what I mean when I say, why are we all fiddling while Rome burns? Like, what are we going to do that is of more value than just trying to score points against anonymous other people? And I admit I'm part of the problem. Sometimes I'll get into these conversations that I know aren't going to go anywhere useful, but I just feel like hammering home my point, or, can't let go of whatever bees in my bonnet that day. I'm not exempting myself, but this is what troubles me.
Well, you say that, Marianne. I don't know if you know, there's a story about the writer G.K. Chesterton, and I believe it was the Times newspaper asked him, as well as a number of other erudite people of his day, to write each to provide an essay on the theme of what's wrong with the world today. And, they expected that G.K. Chesterton would produce this really, erudite piece of work. And what he submitted was a piece of paper that said, "I am."
Ah, brilliant.
Well, so let me we had talked with Martin in the green room right before we went live about this, and I'd like to throw this out to both of you. We actually had a guest on a while back to discuss how and why these shootings happen, and I think there's much more nuance to it than just there's too many guns in the United States. Obviously, I'm a proponent of that, is also one of the problems, but it was an interesting discussion, and it was a good discussion. It was about a week ago. And unfortunately, it's not going to be our last one, and I think we all know that. So one thing I would like to do, one of the things that Martin had said was he's not an American, so he doesn't really get to opine. And there are many circumstances in which that's true. But the one thing is, in some ways, he is uniquely qualified in as much as he can say, as somebody who lives in a country that doesn't seem to have these kinds of problems, and as an outsider looking in. And as Americans, we have a million views as to what the problems are and how and why. But as people who are watching this and open up the papers and see something like this happening in another country that has been unable to really do anything about it, I'd be curious to know what each of your views are. So if you don't mind, and I'll start with Martin, in this case. And if it really is godlessness, you can go right ahead and say that. But whatever I'd be very curious to hear your takes on it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, I suppose, without wanting to steal any of Marianne's thunder, if you've seen Bowling for Columbine, one of the things that struck me about that is that I believe Canada's gun laws are not totally dissimilar to Americans, but the Canadians as a nation do not seem so hell-bent on destroying each other. And I think from my point of view, I don't understand why people generally need to have sort of military-grade weapons. And I believe the figures are there are the number of handguns or guns in circulation in America is well over sort of 3 per person, and it just seems madness to me that the individual right to have a firearm seems to trump any notion of common good, and that's the bit that I think seems really odd to me as a British person. And my parents felt so strongly about it. Back in the 70s, Westinghouse tried to headhunt my father, who was a very, very good engineer. And he and my mum were quite clear that although it would have meant an amazing uplift in how we lived, that he didn't want his children growing up in a nation where carrying guns was considered normal.
I think that our rate of gun ownership in Canada probably is just about as high as in the U.S., although it does tend to center in certain areas, and particularly in rural areas. I live in Toronto, which has more handgun shootings than anywhere else in Canada. So I'm not saying it's strictly rural, but I am saying we do have that pattern. Generally speaking, I think most of the population sees guns as tools and not as toys. I think that there's that. Boy, that's a harsh thing to say about the States, isn't it? But I think there is that kind of, you see recently there was a whole slew of photos of like Christmas photos of families getting together in front of the tree, all holding their guns. That's what I mean by toys, like, accessories. We don't seem to have that culture. And it's hard to know why. I do think that some of it may have to do with our more socialist bent. We've got plenty of, folks on the right side of the political spectrum, although Canadian right is like U.S. centrist, I think. But, we've got our right-wing political parties that are, heavily criticize immigration and a lot in common with the general themes we see in the U.S. But we also have policies that no matter what party people belong to, we treasure. One of the key among those, I think in survey after survey, now I haven't seen in the last 10 years, okay? But in the first, I'll admit my age here, at first 30 years or so of my life when I was old enough to understand this stuff, I kept seeing survey after survey of Canadians saying that the number one thing people identify with being Canadian that they don't want to lose is our universal health care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's not just that we can be treated and not have to worry about going bankrupt. It's that we know that other people, when we see someone injured, of course we're worried for them, but there's also a certain security in knowing that they're not about to be bankrupted, that, that there is a net there to catch them. And there are some holes in that net, but generally we hugely value that sense that everybody or almost everybody is being taken care of at a basic level. And I think when that's part of your national identity, I think that carries over into things like how do we treat guns? There's just that constant thread of what about everybody else? What does it mean if you own a gun to everybody else? And sure, we have people who are, fervent about gun rights, but it's not... They tend not to use the lines, God, I'm trying to think of some of the ones I've heard from the States. The over my dead body, you'll take my guns over my dead body, that kind of thing. You just tend not to hear that language here. Mm-hmm. And I think because we don't have that us and them quite so much, because we have that underlying thread of us.
So one of the
when distinguishing us from us and them.
One of the objections to that I sometimes say when we're talking guns is every gun owner thinks that they're one of the responsible ones and the above average. The statistics are you're 5 times more likely to shoot a family member than. And so these are some of the photos that Marianne was referring to. But I noticed an interesting thing about one of them. So this is one of those Christmas card photos. And what struck me about this that was disturbing for me was everybody here is making it look like it's the gun that makes them happy. And I was just like, that's an interesting message to be sending. And then this one here, which has the same thing. But the other thing I noticed was, if you take a look at the man in the middle, the old gentleman there with the blue shirt.
Yes, yeah, I've seen that. He's actually he's got his finger on the trigger, yes, and he's pointing it at a family member.
Yes, his finger is in fact on the trigger, and the gun is, if that were to go off, that would hit the woman in the pink or purple shirt in the head, and possibly also hit the one in the green. And his finger's on the trigger. And one of the things, and now Zandring is somebody who does very, very much take these things seriously. And one of the things that I've listened to him repeatedly, he's like, a gun is always loaded. Even if there isn't a bullet in the chamber, the gun is loaded. The gun is always loaded. So I'm looking at this family, and one of the things that got me thinking about it was, one of the guns is painted pink, another one's got all these colors on it, and it's a different culture than many of the people on the right say it is, and I'm aware that there's also an ideal that if we maintained might change the nature of the debate. But it again, every driver is above average, and every gun owner is one of the responsible ones. And those pictures are just that was interesting to me. So. I'd like to also get Zandring's take on this, and then if anyone else has anything they want to say after that, we can do that. And I'll quickly hit the live chat.
To mine, though?
Please.
I'm sorry, Zandring, but can I add one more bit to mine?
No, wait a minute, it's my show. Why does everybody else know all of a sudden? Oh my God! The only reason I decided I wanted to do a YouTube channel was so I could talk more than everybody else, and everybody here is thinking like it's there. Fine. What do you want to say?
Settle down, Nick.
Yeah, no kidding, eh? Easy boy. I wanted to add that if I were a person who was currently receiving social assistance or trying to get by without decent workplace benefits, and there are lots of them here, I would be very angry, having heard, as that person in the audience, having heard what I just said about how we have this thread of we here in Canada. We have huge problems with letting people go hungry. Our social assistance rates, at least in Ontario, are dismal. I mean, they are so far below the poverty line. I spent about 2 weeks buying groceries for someone who was home with COVID-19. And she was receiving social assistance, and she wanted me to buy, using her bank card, what she always buys. It absolutely broke my heart. I thought, how can she live like this? So I just want to add in, I think I misled everyone to some extent by saying, yes, we have this whole culture of we care about each other, and that's my evidence for that is our, universal health system. It's not it's not that rosy, and I have to acknowledge that. Okay? I really have to acknowledge that. But I still think that we have a little more of that thread in the Canadian psyche, and that may just be what makes the difference, that we don't tend to have the big school shootings, even though we have high gun ownership.
That was actually one of the arguments that so we had on Brooks, who has had some experience with shootings, and he's studied it, but he's unfortunately had some personal experiences with it as well. And we had him on last week to discuss it, and that was one of the things that he had said and pointed out whether we don't often think about. Which is funny because I think specifically it dovetails with what Martin had said in the beginning, because I think that's kind of the area in which he lives, which is the people who are on the knife's edge every day. And to some extent, that's all of us, right? Because a comet can hit the earth. We could all, life is awfully precarious at all times. But if you don't have a savings account and you don't have health insurance and you're working a job, you're just one sickness away from not being able to get your kids to school, not being able to feed your kids. And we've had COVID, we've had a number of shortages, and I have to believe I got a lot of anger in my life for plenty of stuff that has nothing to do with most of those needs, most of mine of which have been met for the most part most of my life. So it seems to me that the U.S. more than almost any other country has this rugged individualism and this sense of almost neoliberalism. Now, neoliberalism is a thing here, and it's a thing even above that. But at our adopted current economic level, it really is sort of sink or swim is the best. And if you're failing in that, well, that's obviously your fault, and you need to find a way to pull yourself up to an extent beyond any other industrialized nation that I'm aware of. And that's an interesting problem. And it does seem to me that that would contribute to a sense of impotence over one's own life that I have to believe having a gun and using it on someone would feel at least like it would rectify.
Mm-hmm. 𝐂𝐚𝐥𝐥 has been very patient here. Thank you for waiting, but I do want to hear what he has to say.
I am a paragon of patience when we have guests.
He's a paragon of patience. Listen, he talks to me after the show, too. He kind of has to be a paragon of patience if we're going to get along. So, yeah, what were you going to say?
I think that there's a fundamental issue that's causing this violence in the United States. It can be somewhat easy at times to get firearms. And sometimes, like, you turn 18, you go buy your rifle. Like, well, you don't have a criminal record or anything like that. Like, there's no history there to try and base anything off of. And there's this fundamental problem, and I think I have the feeling, I don't have any like hard evidence for it, but I have the feeling that this sentiment is kind of growing. There's something broken, especially towards the bottom. That people are being left out. Their needs aren't being met. They're becoming more and more desperate, and they're becoming more and more angry and disenfranchised, and simply want to burn everything down around them. And I think that that's where we need to focus on. I mean, somebody can pick up a truck and drive it through a crowd in France and kill 86 people. I mean, there's certainly a very big problem when you have people that come out of our system of living that are capable of doing that. And I'm sure that there are psychopaths out there, and you're never going to get rid of them. And then the question is, what do you do about them? Because you don't fix that. But when you look at some of these people, and we're like, there's no apparent, something apparently horribly wrong with them that has led, and even because we see other people that have, some serious mental challenges that don't massively or go out and mass kill people. So we need to figure out, really dig into the problem and figure out what is causing this. And we need to, be able to agree that we need to figure out what this problem is, and then find what the best solutions may be. Because right now, I don't think many people have a whole bunch of actual solutions to how do we stop people from taking that left turn into, mass killing. And we're probably going to have to, try a great many different things. But I really I think that it's most effective to try and get at the actual root cause of what's causing this, instead of trying to go, sometimes going after symptoms is helpful because it at least mitigates some of the damage that can be caused in the meantime. But I think that we really need to focus on, what is causing people to want to pick up a gun and go kill, 18 freaking kids. I mean, they're children.
Yeah, I want to challenge you a little bit with a question. For you specifically, 𝗂𝐚𝐥𝐥, to follow up on what you're saying.
Yeah, hold on. I got to I'm going to hide myself and just, go. Okay,
I'm not here. I'm not taken over the interviewing.
So I don't. As long as she's not asking me, go ask him. I'm putting down the blast doors. I am good.
Okay. When you say we need to figure this out, I'm wondering what you think of the fact, and if I'm mistaken, please correct me. But as I understand it, governments sponsored or funded research into the causes of gun violence is specifically, I don't want to say banned, but discouraged in the United States. That this has been true for decades now. That this was incorrect. Funded a while back, and now it is simply not considered for government funding.
No, that's not correct. The CDC was prohibited from studying this, Centers for Disease Control.
And that's actually,
I mean, they still do.
There was a bill passed that said that the CDC could study this to their heart's content, but they could not publish any findings that could be used to argue for gun control because those findings would necessarily be biased. That was the conclusion. The problem is, what that means is, since you haven't done the studies yet, you haven't done the research, if the research finds that we should in fact get rid of guns, that would be, then you couldn't publish them and you couldn't say it. So that essentially pulled funding from the CDC for studying this, because they'd be prohibited from publishing their studies, and any attempt at an end run they felt would jeopardize their funding even further. So the CDC has, for all intents and purposes, shut it down. They are not explicitly barred from studying it, but they are effectively barred from studying it.
Well, barred from publishing any results that might call into question, the
Yes.
expansive freedom of access to guns, etc. So my question is, Andrew, is when you say we need to figure this out, what do you see as the steps toward figuring it out? And is that one of them, trying to break down that particular barrier?
Absolutely. I think that the more information that we have, the better decisions we can make. I'm not a fan of limiting it. We do studies on everything else. There's no reason we can't do studies on violent crime. And there's lots of studies done on violent crime that include the use of handgun, but it's not, or the use of firearms that isn't specifically targeted at simply, gun crime. And we need to have more of it. We need to have more access. I do agree that we need more access to, health services. Poverty creates a huge number of issues, and it's not an issue that we seem to take particularly seriously in the United States. I guess, even if you're in the bottom, I think it's the bottom 20% of America, you're still in the top 1% of the world. So
yeah.
We don't particularly take poverty all that seriously in the United States, and we have a lot of first world problems, but those problems still cause a hell of a lot of stress. And I would be very interested in, especially doing a lot more studies psychologically to find out what causes people to snap to that action. And I've seen a couple of psychologists that have addressed it, and one of the big things is they've become so bitterly angry and disenfranchised that they literally just want to burn the world down around them. And it's when you get somebody that starts along that corridor, and I've heard a couple of different arguments as to what is it that actually causes them to go down those corridors, or what kinds of thought processes cause them to go down that kind of corridor. But they pretty much all agree that it's like, once somebody has gotten to the point that they're so filled with rage that they just want to burn the world down, those are the people that pick up guns and go just kill people, or get into a truck and mow 86 people down. So it's a difficult thing, and we don't seem to have a whole lot of it's like we talk a lot, but we don't seem to actually put our money where our mouth is and fund the kinds of research that would need to be done to come up with the answers to how do we get at the root problem of somebody wanting to go kill all of these people.
Nick, you're going to hate it. I've got another question.
Go for it.
All right, go for it.
No, but
I don't hate questions.
I'm recapping Nick's question to Martin.
Please.
I have my names right? Nick to Martin, yes. Which is, I think Nick was joking, but I'm really curious what you think from the religious angle, because I think he was joking when he said, is it just godlessness or what? But I noticed you didn't touch on any sort of religious side of this, so I'm going to push you a bit.
Yeah, sure.
See, that's what I do to push people, and then they kick me.
I kind of, I'm aware of, is it the someone who's trying to get elected? Is it Georgia or wherever it is, where her campaign bus has Jesus, guns, and babies on it or something? And that just, I can't think of anybody in this country. There might be some minority somewhere that I'm unaware of, but because we're not a nation who carries guns, there isn't a kind of a religious equation to it here, and I guess I kind of find this. I personally I can't imagine ever wanting to carry a gun that was capable of doing any great damage. I have once owned a gun, and that was a black powder muzzle loading musket when I used to do living history as an American Civil War soldier in this country. But you can't really go on a mass killing when it takes you about 3 minutes to load your weapon. But it's. I get I can't recall if I've actually heard it said, but I think the thing is, it feels like in the States that somehow so many people think it's, and I mean literally, a God-given right to carry a weapon, and I just find that baffling.
Yeah, guns, God, and ammunition, I've heard.
The argument isn't that, at least as I understand the argument, I mean, I've heard people make this argument very poorly, so I'm not saying that people aren't saying this, but the fundamental argument is that you have a God-given right, if you believe in God, that you have a God-given right to self-defense. Ergo, you have a right to the tools most effective to enact that self-defense. So you have criminals that are going to be robbing you at gunpoint. Therefore, we should have the right to keep and bear arms of our own to protect ourselves from that. It's not that you have a God-given right to own the gun. It's that you have the God-given right to, fundamental right to self-defense. And that in order to enact that self-defense in a world full of guns, you need to have access to guns. You should have the right to have access to those guns as well to protect yourself. So you're at least on an even playing field.
Right. I get it, but I mean, obviously, I can't say too much about guns because of where I am, but I'm very mindful of the statistic in this country that a lot of young people carry knives to protect themselves, but the statistics are quite clear that if you carry a knife, you're statistically far more likely to end up being stabbed.
And same with guns, yes. Gun owners are more likely to be shot, is my understanding.
Well. So what I'm going to do is, because it's been a difficult day for everybody, I think this is a topic that we're going to discuss again. I wanted to get your opinions as outsiders, but I'd like to hold off on the gun debate for now because we've had a lot of that, and I do think it was a delightful show. So I wanted to, while I had you guys on, make sure we hit on that for obvious reasons. I don't want to dwell on it any longer than we need to. I did want to say one thing. Which is, well, before I do, actually, so I'll wrap up the show. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to say? Martin, anything that you wanted to say before closing, either to expand on or where people can find you? Twitter is an obvious place, Marianne, and then Xandring. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm easy enough to find on Twitter, and I should say it was well worth staying up to 2:00 in the morning to start with.
That's right.
I've enjoyed. I'm now looking and see it's 7 minutes to 4 in the morning, and I've enjoyed myself.
Thank you.
Oh, and thank you so much, Martin.
The Top Gun movie.
Thank you so much for staying up half your night.
Marianne,
I've got tons of thoughts, but a lot of that's because I showed up so late. So it's my own fault. I will just have to ponder them in silence. But,
and we'll do an after dark, and
yeah. There's really so much more to go into here. Yeah. All I can say is, folks, I really have to encourage you. I only know Martin from Twitter. I don't know what his presence is otherwise, but I really encourage you to just check out what he has to say. He's a lot of fun. I've learned a lot over the years, but not through info dumps, okay? Like, this isn't a heavy feed he runs. It's just kind of a friendly throw in the odd idea or chat, and we've had some really good ones. So I really have to recommend looking him up. And what is your handle on Twitter? What's your handle on Twitter, Martin?
Oh, drums. At Martin J. I've got to look it up myself. I mean, if you do a search for Reverend Martin Joss, you'll find me. I think it's at MJT Joss. That's it.
And you're also on our Discord. So if anybody wants to if you want to harass him, we'll provide a direct link. We'd be happy to do that. Xandring, any final thoughts?
Are you and I heading over to Discord?
Are you done? I don't. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do this, which is And those of you who've been on the show before know, as soon as we go to credits, we'll be back in the green room so we can figure out what we'll do after. I may head on to Discord. I need to rest just a little bit because I'm starting to feel I'm still recovering from pneumonia. I can get these coughing fits, so I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and we'll figure out what we'll do. If you're going to be in Discord, I'll definitely be there because I want to watch the show. But Discord will definitely be up.
Slaughter, you mean? Yeah.
It's not going to be slaughter, and then I'm going to, I got to check on my kids and wrap up. But yeah, I'll be in the Discord for a little bit afterwards. So Martin needs to sleep, so I know he's going to be interested, but we're going to let him go and we'll bring him back is what we'll do with that. So,
I love it. All just got blessed.
Yep. So Xandri, any final thoughts?
I guess my final thought, I'm not entirely sure what the exact question was going to be, but Marianne had asked something about, is it just a lack of God? And, not believing that a God exists. I would have to say that I believe firmly that a lack of community, face-to-face community, interconnection with real human beings sitting in front of you is definitely
that was a bit tongue-in-cheek, by the way. I got to say, it was a bit tongue-in-cheek, the question. My question was not, is it a lack of belief in God? But it was kind of throwing it open to Martin to take that look at, what does religion entail, since he's, an expert on the subject, and just say, in his own field, shall we say, standing in his field, and just see what he has to say on it.
Interrupt. Do you know the definition of an expert?
What's that?
No.
X is an unknown quantity and a spurt's a drip under pressure.
Excellent. Well done.
All right,
but sorry, Xandri, but I had to correct you there because no, I wasn't even trying to imply that, it was belief in or lack of belief in God that was the issue. I was kind of taking a tongue-in-cheek question and batting it over to Martin to see what he'd say.
Okay.
So with that correction, Xandri, anything else you wanted to add?
No. Be well to each other. We're all in this together, and none of us are making it out alive.
Yeah, that's not what the Christians think. But so
hey.
All right. So and people who have known me for any length of time are aware I do identify as an anti-theist, but in the sort of classical theism sense, I've met plenty of atheists and anti-theists who think that if you have any faith-based beliefs, there's something wrong with you. We all have faith-based beliefs, and you cannot avoid that. You can't. And I've lost atheist friends by saying, by the way, when you're judging theists for their irrational beliefs, be aware you cannot function without having some yourself. And like, oh no, I can't. Oh really? When I get into a logical, rational argument with the guy who's, let's do this, and it doesn't usually end well with my friendships.
Actually, Nick.
Yes.
As a God-fearing man, can I actually help you out and give you I have a friend who's an atheist who's pointed out to me that he has the definitive proof that there is no God, and as you have kids, you will understand this. If there was a God, children would have an off switch. It's a design fault.
Yeah, that's one of the better arguments I've ever heard. I'm on board with that one. I'll buy that one. So, people sit there and say, and we had on the show 𝗫𝗫𝐺 𝗲𝗲, who is a Greek Orthodox minister and was one of the groomsmen in my wedding, and has been a friend of mine for a very long time. And it's not the faith that has ever bothered me about religion in the slightest, and as someone who used to have it and does very often miss it, I'm happy for people who have it, and I'm happy for people who share it and share it with others. The point at which I think all moral agents must intercede is when someone says, well, this divine power which I happen to be able to talk to, which not every Christian says, of course, but and of any religion that I can talk to and nobody else can see or do this, has not only told me how to live life, but has empowered me to tell you how to live yours. And that I don't think any moral agent can permit, and that's what I'm against. So Titan had said this well on the Discord. I have broken a record today. Today, I have beaten my previous personal record for a number of years lived. My previous record was 47. Today, it is 48. And I can't think of a better way to celebrate my birthday than amongst friends, Isandering, Marianne, and Martin, and people who have disagreed on faith, but we all get along because of these beliefs of caring about other people and how important that is. And that's why I'm so proud that they're my friends, even Martin. And I'm so glad
Begrudging.
that you guys, I got this morning, I was able to chat with a number of good friends on the phone, on VC. It's been a hard day for everybody. But can't think of a better way to spend my 28th birthday with all of you here. Thank you for celebrating. You didn't know until now,
28th.
But thank you for sharing
In
it.
the 20th anniversary of your
48th. Yeah, it's the second anniversary of my 24th. But at any rate, thank you all for joining us tomorrow night. Thank you. Tomorrow night we will have on 𝗲𝗲𝗲, as we're going to talk about monkeypox. There's been, some people, the CDC had said it's not an issue. A leak from the CDC said they're terrified and concerned. We're going to have him on tomorrow to discuss, is monkeypox really a thing now, and given the year, let's just. Your guess is going to be roughly where mine is going to land on that one. And then on the Thursday, we are going to have on Commander Lance McMillan. Those of you who've watched the show for a while know who he is, and we have been blessed to have him on. He's just an excellent human being and unbelievably knowledgeable about war and how it's prosecuted and what it means and what it in practical terms, and has been a huge aid to us trying to understand Ukraine and where it's heading and what outs there may be from that. We're going to have him on, and you know what? Ukraine will come up, I'm sure. I am buying him a glass of scotch, and we're going to sit down and have it's going to be a good time. So I hope you guys will join us. Thank you all once again. I'll be in the Discord a little bit later, mostly to watch and see what happens with Marianne down there. There's always fireworks. It's a blast. I get fireworks on my birthday, too. That'll be spectacular. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow night. 𝗲𝗲𝗲 on Is Monkeypox Going to Be a Thing? Good night all.